Hello everyone, today we are going to be talking about the case of Harley Dilly. The reason I actually heard of Harley Dilly was from one of those stupid videos on YouTube talking about something like YouTube's darkest channels, number 3. And I feel like the guy who made that video and a lot of people who are making these videos aren't really pointing out a lot of the big blaring red flags. There are definitely some people on YouTube doing a great job with pointing out some of the errors with the FBI report and with some of the weird information that's been given on a lot of the news websites. There are so many holes in this story. There's so many weird things that don't make any sense. We need to talk about it because if we don't, it's just going to fall into obscurity and the kid's never going to get any justice. So I just really wanted to talk about this today. That's what we're going to do. Let's get into it. Harley Dilly was a young kid who lived in Port Clinton, Ohio. He, had a YouTube channel. He uploaded videos onto that channel. The content consisted of Roblox and video games, and then also mixed in with a little bit of him talking about his life, his troubles in life, his family, some of the issues he's having with his family. We all did it when we were kids. It's a completely natural thing to do, and that in itself does not bring up very much concern, but some of the things he goes on about actually do. We're going to focus on a couple of the videos that draw a great deal of concern towards the family of Harley Dilly, particularly his parents, his mother and his father. So let me just explain that on the morning of December 20th, 2019, Harley complained about having a stomachache apparently, and asked his mother if he could skip school that day. His mother refused and told him to go to school. He did. He left for school, but he apparently never returned and never got to school that day. He was reported missing on the 21st, just before midnight at 11:50 p.m. by his father, Marcus Dilly. Over 39 hours had passed from Harley having left home, apparently, to when he was reported missing to the police by his father. That is insane. Could you imagine that? Think about this. Say your kid leaves for school, and you think he's at school. School's about 6 hours. Say he walks to school and back, and say he goes and plays with his friends for a few hours. That's about 9 to 10 hours maximum that you wouldn't see your kid. But they reported in 39 hours, not 10 or 12 hours. They reported him literally over 24 hours after they hadn't seen him. That, in my opinion, draws a very big red flag. His parents said that him not returning home immediately was not unheard of and that he had done this before, but this time seems like an incredibly long amount of time to not know where your child is. He apparently often fought with his parents, so I guess the excuse is that he runs away a lot and that he would run away again, so they assumed he ran away. And that doesn't make any sense to me because if your kid ran away, you would at least be kind of calling around after the second day maybe to see maybe if he's at a friend's house, because it's scary. Your kid runs away from home. You would be calling around. You'd be kind of curious. You'd be like, where are they? I hope they're okay. You'd be worried, You wouldn't wait around for almost 40 hours not having heard anything from him. And it sounded like he just, had a stomachache and was told to go to school. The conflict there isn't that intense to have warranted him just being like, okay, whatever, I'll run away. And where would he have gone? Did he have a job? Did he have any money? Like, he obviously would have gone to a friend's house or something. And if that were the case, his parents could check pretty easily if he was at a friend's house or not. And behind the scenes of this runaway report, you actually can look on his YouTube channel and see a much darker element to what's been going on over the years. When it came to the whole story being depicted to the police of him being a runaway, he was often, he often did this, he often didn't show up after, school or whatever, and he would just go off, do whatever. He actually had a lot of videos on his YouTube channel, some deleted and some left up there. His mother actually locked him out of the house and left the premises after the two of them had an argument in the car about Harley's mom visiting a friend while he wanted to go home. As a result, Harley's mom actually locked him out of the house, apparently called the police on him, and made him wait out in the cold. I think he must have been threatened in some kind of way, outside of just being locked out of the house, because he kind of alludes to something bad happening to him in the future. It's just really messed up.
It's Harley Dilly. Probably one of my worst days of my life. My mom wanted me to go with her to go get a friend, and I said I don't want to. I have work to do, so I want to go home. We argued for about a good 5 minutes, Then she snapped. She said she was gonna call police, and she said she already did. And she locked me out of the house. So right now, I'm outside. Yep, the house is locked. I haven't ate anything, and I still haven't even got to get my work done. My mom's gone. She won't answer the phone. I legit was scared. I just want you guys to wish me good luck, because the future could hold bad things for me. I don't want to find out what that could mean.
In another video, Harley uploaded some gameplay while his parents fought loudly in the other room. The fight was about some kind of drink being spilled on the table by one of the kids.
My dad's being an asshole right now.
And, you know, I don't really blame this kind of situation because I don't know how bad yelling at your kid is. I mean, I don't know anyone who wasn't yelled at as a child for doing something wrong, but the tensions in the house, just from what I'd been seeing in the videos, seemed somewhat high, so I'm a little bit concerned about the parents being portrayed as so innocent, how the mother's crying and begging for her child to come back, how the father is hoping, saying that the mother's a rock, she's been holding this family together, and they are now being treated like saints online. When there's something sinister about these parents for not reporting their child and waiting for so long, for neglecting the situation until it had become too late to save the kid. Like, it was pretty obvious that something was wrong. So why on earth did they leave it this long? I just can't understand. After the police report was made, the following day, on December 22nd at about 10 a.m., Heather Dilly, Harley Dilly's mother, posted a Facebook message, a video, talking about how her son was missing and to contact her or the police or her husband or whatever. And that post was later removed. Now, I'm not sure why it was removed. I don't know. I don't know what the reason was for that Facebook message or for it being later taken down. I know that a lot of people put up videos and things like that, and they later regret putting them up, so that was probably the case in my opinion. She just regretted putting it up after. I probably wouldn't. If my kid were missing, I would be screaming to the rooftops. But I don't know. Maybe the police told her to take it down. Maybe it gave off a bad vibe in respects to if Harley had been kidnapped or if he had gone missing or like what the situation was, because at this point, you know, you're only 2 days into a search. You're not weeks into a search, so you don't really know what exactly has happened to him. You only know that this is out of character behavior and it warrants you freaking out. So I don't really know. I don't really have anything to comment about that, but it's a little tidbit of information that I thought would be important to add in. You know, the sad thing about this is after all of these reportings and, you know, the extensive, quote-unquote, extensive conduct that the police performed and all the stupid goddamn Facebook messages, which, by the way, the Port Clinton police were really involved on Facebook. So by December 25th, Port Clinton police released some surveillance footage of Harley, or who they believed to be Harley. There's no actual proof that this is Harley, and for all we know, we don't know who this person is. We don't actually know if it's Harley. We have no clue. We're just guessing here. We're basing it off of this gritty footage. We don't know if it's actually him. And the sad thing about the story is that Harley was found inside of a chimney of a vacant house, a house that was being renovated by the owners, and they were no longer there. He apparently had to have climbed the TV tower that was beside the house, and then would have to cross a little bit of open space before getting from the TV tower to the roof of the house. And with a flashlight, tried to go down the chimney. And he went down there all the way, and he got stuck at the end. And he took his clothes off because he couldn't breathe properly, and he suffocated to death. So he was found in only his underwear, inside of the chimney. The police said that foul play was not suspected, and it appeared that the death was accidental. That's what the police said. So this kid had to have climbed all the way up a TV tower. And by the way, it was snowing this night. It was snowing. He had to have gone onto a roof, had to have gone into a chimney. He got stuck in the chimney. He couldn't claw his way out. He ended up stuck. He was having trouble breathing. And the result was that he took all of his clothes off and he still suffocated to death. He was deceased, and he was found weeks later. That's the story. So now we're going to go into some of the holes of this story. I've got a list of them, so we'll go through each one, and we'll kind of debunk them. And by the way, if I say anything that doesn't sound correct, because I don't know everything about this story yet, by all means, point it out. I'm not the god of knowledge here, alright? I just want to know the truth like all of you. So, number one. Why did it take his parents so long to report him missing? Why did it take 39 hours? 39 hours is a long time of you having no idea where your kid could be. Also, by the way, that 39-hour estimate is actually more of an underestimate because I had guessed he had left the house at about 8 a.m. But apparently he was out at around 6. So that adds another 2 hours onto the amount of time that he was out of the house and not seen. And again, let's say that he hasn't been home, he's at school, then he's going out with friends to hang out, deduct 10 hours off of there. Or even 12. But how on earth would it take you literally like 40 hours to become concerned enough to call the police? Why wouldn't you do it after the first day? Also, is it not convenient that his father told the police that Harley was mad and left because he had broken his phone and, quote-unquote, demanded they get a new one? I find that very oddly convenient given the circumstances. And yes, it could just be coincidental, to be fair, but it is very odd, I must say. And also, isn't that even more horrifying to hear that your child has run away from home and doesn't have a cell phone in order to call for help if they're in trouble? Is that not a red flag of concern for you? Say you're waiting for your kid to come home after you send them to school and it's the evening and, it's like a normal occurrence. I can understand that to a degree, but why were the police not called after he never showed up that night? Instead, it took another 24 hours after that point for them to go to the police. Part of me really thinks that the parents had something to do with this purely out of the fact that they reported the case so late. Also, wouldn't you at least call around to see if your kid was staying with his friends or his girlfriend or his, anywhere? Wouldn't you call around to see where your kid is, at least in the evening? Go like, oh yeah, I should check if, Billy is at his friend's house, otherwise I'm gonna start freaking out and call 911 because he's missing. Like, who doesn't do this? What parent leaves their kid like this? Like, this is the most ridiculous part of this story, and it's how stupid the parents were in this. It's how dumb the parents were. If they are not guilty of hurting this child or being the cause of this child's unfortunate incident, they are at least guilty of child neglect and should be charged for child neglect if they haven't already. So, number 2, Harley apparently used a flashlight to see down the chimney that he was going down. So the reason that I wanted to point out the flashlight is because some people believe that the flashlight was planted on him, and other people believe that it was actually there. I just think it's odd that he managed to climb all the way to the roof from a TV tower and look down with his flashlight down into a chimney instead of look around the perimeter of the house to find other access points. That doesn't make very much sense to me. Personally, I can believe that he might have actually had that flashlight on his person, but if that's the case, then he would have definitely noticed other areas of access to the house. And if that indeed is the case, he probably didn't actually go in through the chimney. Also, interestingly, other people have attempted to actually solve this by testing if the chimney theory works. They've taken their own kids. This woman over here took her own kid. He's 4'9", and he actually is lighter than Harley. He's about 90 pounds instead of the 100 that Harley was. And they made a little 9 by 13 inch fake chimney and tried to fit it over the kid. The kid's shoulders were actually not as wide as Harley's, and surprisingly, the fake chimney they made actually was very snug. It was hard to get over the kid's shoulders. So it's very interesting that Harley, who actually weighs more, but also has wider shoulders, managed to fit into the same size chimney. Very interesting. Number 3 is that he was found only wearing his underwear, and I can't find the exact locations that all of the clothing were found in, but they were found in different locations of the house. And the reason they said he was in his underwear was because he couldn't apparently breathe, because it was so tight in the place. The chimney was only a 9 by 13 chimney. It was really small, so he barely could fit in there. And he apparently couldn't expand and contract his chest properly. So as he was stuck, unable to climb out of the chimney, he was starting to suffocate. But the problem is, if you don't have any room to breathe, how do you have room to take off your clothes and shimmy around enough to remove your, sweater and your shirt? This takes you needing to move your hands in front of your shirt, to pull your jacket off. Then you've got to, move it off of your shoulders. You've all taken off clothing before. And if you haven't, I'm not here to give you a tutorial, baby. But you obviously can tell that it takes more than a little bit of breathing room to take off all these clothes. So if he was actually stuck and he didn't even have enough room to breathe, how did he have enough room to remove his clothing? It just didn't make any sense. So I don't get how you can be removing your clothes and not have enough room to breathe, but you have enough room to move your clothes and move your body enough to be able to take off all your clothes and somehow even get your socks and pants off and, take off your, sweater, your thick down sweater that you have, or your jacket, whatever. And take off your glasses, too. The other thing was he took off his glasses. Why on earth would you take off your glasses if you're trying to breathe better? Your glasses don't impair breathing. In fact, they only allow you to see. So it made zero sense why he would do that. Another aspect of his clothing was that it was filthy. His socks, his pants, his clothing, and particularly, though, his socks, were covered in mud. His socks actually also had pebbles and things stuck to them, as if he had been walking on a very, gravelly-esque kind of ground. But the other clothes that he had were covered in dirt, and covered in what looked to be just dirt and kind of ply, sand. It was kind of orangish, but it was more on the yellow side from the looks of it in some of the pictures. And, yeah, you could say that a lot of this came from the chimney, but how were there pebbles in the chimney? It doesn't make that much sense. I'm imagining that he actually had the dirt come from somewhere else. Number 4, there were other access points to the house. There were crawl spaces, guys. I couldn't find a lot of information about the crawl spaces, but I did notice a couple of videos talking about it. There were a couple of crawl spaces that were on the sides of the house that were apparently not tampered with, but it definitely looks like the bricks from one of the areas ended up being moved to cover up the other area. Someone moved some of the bricks from one of the crawl spaces to the other. And I think it was either to cover up something or it was to hold the grid in place so that it looked like it hadn't been moved. The other thing I want to know, by the way, is why would Harley not go into the crawl spaces or pull the grid off or move the bricks before trying to climb a tower and scale a roof to drop through a chimney? It just doesn't make any sense. And another thing, by the way, I need to add this in right now. Why on earth would you risk your life going down a chimney when you're just across the street from your parents? I know that some of you might say, hey, he's a kid. He didn't understand the mortality of his situation or the risks involved. I'm sorry, but he's not 2. He's 14. Also, even I and my most reckless of friends that I would hang out with in middle school knew that if I were to climb up a tower or jump onto a roof or, guess what, jump down a chimney, it probably wouldn't turn out so good. I'm just saying, nobody does this. Nobody does this. Number 5, there were other things in the house consisting of a mattress, empty beer bottles, and someone else's clothing. A little questionable, I have to say. It might have been from the person who maybe owned the place. It might have been from someone else. It could have been a squatter. I don't know. I'm just mentioning that these clothes weren't Harley's, and they also had thorn marks from the looks of it inside of them, as well as an actual thorn on one of the images that I found online of the clothing article. So that could actually be from outside where the crawl space was. I know we're stretching here, but honestly, it isn't that far-fetched when we think about things. The crawl space did look like it was disrupted. The crawl space also had some thorny things in that zone. You dig around, you get a thorn on you. Big question. I'm just asking questions, guys. Number 6, I've said this before and I'll say it again. Why did he not go across the street to his parents' house and instead choose the most extreme option, that of climbing a TV tower, going onto a roof and scaling down a chimney. How does this happen? This makes no sense. I'm just saying this makes no sense. In any other situation, you would at least try the crawl space before you go to the extreme option if you are so unwilling as to see your parents. Also, I just have to mention, it was also snowing and probably super icy out, so, I mean, I'm pretty impressed. If this kid actually managed to climb the TV tower, I am thoroughly impressed that he did it without proper footwear, and he managed to do it in a cold and icy environment. And number 7 is something I kind of want to point out to you guys, even though it's not super evidence-based, it's something that drew my attention a lot because it might be that Harley didn't have ADHD or high-functioning autism. Now, hear me out. I cannot find any information proving that Harley was clinically diagnosed with ADHD or autism. The only claims I can find are those made by his parents, and they have not been corroborated with the police. So I don't know if Harley had any learning disabilities or special needs. And the important thing about this is I have seen some individuals online, some being in YouTube videos, actually try and blame the fact that he died in the chimney because he felt the drive to perform outlandish behavior due to his ADHD/autism. Like, I'm hearing things like that, and let me tell you, when I was 14, I acted very similar to Harley. You know, I'm not here to give you guys storytime spiels and, draw my lives, but geez, me and my friends would jump around on the desks during class, we would lash out at teachers, we would run down the hallways and act crazy, we would throw bananas on the roofs and dump garbage in the grates at school and drop yogurt tubes down from the top of the, staircase all the way down to the bottom until they exploded. We did all kinds of crazy stuff, and it's not like we did anything that was a danger to, us or, anyone else, to a degree. But I'm hearing that the natural behaviors that come with, teenagers and young children, just trying to deal with puberty, and I'm hearing those being very commonly manipulated to be, oh, my child is lashing out, they must have ADHD. I've actually dealt with this in my life, and the friends that I've had have dealt with this as well. I'm not trying to say this and pull it out of my butt. People thought we had learning disabilities because we just acted out. And that's not the case. A lot of my friends didn't have those issues. It was just a misconception that a lot of the adults had because they weren't actually trained to diagnose us with any kinds of psychological issues or, learning disabilities or disorders. Personally, I don't really stigmatize people with ADHD, but there is a stigma that does go around showing that, hey, you have ADHD, you can't control yourself, you need to be medicated, you need to be monitored. That is currently the narrative that comes with it. You can't control yourself, you can't stay calm, you can't calm down, you don't know when to stop. These kinds of variables, and that's not always the case. And obviously, I'm not trying to belittle anyone who has ADHD, autism, or any other kind of learning disability. I'm just trying to prove a point that I don't actually see enough evidence for it to verify Harley, in particular, having either of those issues, or both of those issues. Yes, of course, in some of his school vlogs, he acts a little bit more off the wall. But who doesn't act off the wall in school? You're sitting there all goddamn day, and I'm sorry, but I would do the same goddamn thing. When I was his age, I did all the same stuff he did. So, I'm not trying to use my anecdote to perpetuate the narrative that he hasn't had any kinds of, learning disabilities. I'm just trying to say that we shouldn't judge a book by its cover when we don't actually know what's going on inside. It's completely possible that his odd behavior at school actually was a result of an inappropriate home life. Some of the behaviors that are exhibited when children are neglected are actually very similar to children who are suffering with ADHD. Things like poor impulse control and emotional outbursts are two of the things that happen when a child is neglected. And I could totally be wrong. Maybe he does have ADHD and autism. Maybe those are the real things that are causing his behavior in school. But the reality is, we've been lied to so far, especially by the parents, and the parents are obviously not trustworthy individuals, so I'm not going to take what they say about their son without a grain of salt. This might not be the only reason, but I think his parents mainly pushed that narrative because he was lashing out on them. He was, not listening to them, he was arguing with them. And you know what? Maybe it was an excuse for the police report, maybe it was to make them sound a little more innocent in the situation, like, oh, we don't know what to do, he can't control himself, he's got ADHD. ADHD and autism. We can't control him. We just don't know what to do. We're scared parents. That kind of, mantra. That is, in my opinion, another thing that they might have done. I mean, I'm not trying to act like everything in life is sinister. Maybe there is a slim chance that his parents are completely innocent in this whole situation, and that them not reporting him was just a fluke. It was just an accident. They just really didn't understand the severity of the situation. But I mean, come on, guys, who's gonna believe that? It's pretty obvious there's something else going on. So I can't find any proof that Harley actually had any issues with learning, any learning disabilities, any autism, any ADHD. I know that talking about, mental disorders and or learning disabilities online is a very touchy and difficult subject for a lot of us to converse about, but personally, I find that this kind of a subject is very important because misdiagnosis is very common, especially when it's not performed by an actual professional. Now, the interesting thing is, I'm not hearing anything about professionals. I'm hearing things from parents, and parents talk baloney all the time. So I'm not going to trust those parents, especially since they didn't even know how to call the cops. All right? Now, on top of that, I mean, I've been misdiagnosed with learning disabilities, and I've had a lot of friends say that I've had the same kind of thing before. So I'm just trying to say that it's honestly possible that this kid could be misdiagnosed or misunderstood in some kind of way, and it might not even involve a learning disability to begin with. His parents even said he was high functioning, and they said he was a very smart boy. A very smart boy doesn't sound like a very impulsive boy. It sounds like somebody who can understand the dangers of a situation. From what I saw, the kid looked like he understood in some of his videos the dangers of a situation, like when he was locked out of the house. Also, interestingly, he didn't break the windows of his house from what I saw. I mean, I know that we, only saw the video. It wasn't like it was reported, oh yeah, he also broke the windows of that house that time. But, it sounded like he wasn't a particularly impulsive boy. He just sat around on the bench. He didn't actually do anything that could put himself at risk or that could hurt the house in some kind of way even. So here's my final opinion. I personally don't believe that Harley Dilly was capable of climbing the frozen TV tower in the middle of a snowy night, scale a roof, and go down a chimney that he actually couldn't even fit into. I don't think he got stuck, and I don't think he somehow suffocated and ripped off all his clothes only to find himself in his underwear and still died. I don't think that's true. I don't think he had the ability to point the flashlight down in the first place because it was such a snug fit, if he even could fit in the chimney to begin with. My actual belief is that either he was locked out of the house and left to fend for himself, or his parents actually were the ones who did him in. And either way, he ended up somehow, whether it was with somebody else or alone, in the crawl space of the house. I also have one other theory, and that could be that when he was either locked out of the house or when he had left the house, he went to go and see a friend that he had made on YouTube who was actually a predator, and that predator actually was his own demise. Now, the only reason I am saying this is because he had a live stream called First Q&A, Come and Join Me. And in that live stream, Harley was sharing his phone number and other forms of personal information that could allow you to track him down. The other thing was that he was shirtless in the video, which for someone like him or somebody of his age, that's not a really messed up thing to do, to be shirtless. But people online oftentimes are not the kinds of people you want to see you shirtless. Let's just say that much. I do think it is possible that maybe, just maybe, coincidentally, an online predator did, get him somehow. I don't know how. I don't know how that would really fall into play, but that's another theory, I guess. Personally, I believe he was not alone, and that somebody was indeed either in the house beforehand, or it was one of his parents, or it was both of his parents, I mean, who knows, or it was somebody who actually led him into the house. There was somebody probably with him at the time, it only is what makes sense, and somebody killed him. Then I think they either left his body there and the cops found him like that, and for some reason the cops found him there and lied about it, or he actually was stuffed near the chimney or into the chimney. Somehow he was managed to be thrown into the chimney, I guess. I don't know. Somehow he got into the chimney by the hands of somebody else, and his clothes were all over the place. Apparently Harley was never in the house, and to me that just doesn't make any sense. I mean, think about it. You have so many ways of getting into there. You can go in through the crawl spaces. Why would you choose to actually try and go through the chimney of all places? To me that seems like quite a stretch, because his clothes were all over the house. And I know there are excuses about this, and that they were only found in one area of the house, but it doesn't seem like they were. Also, another big red flag that really freaked me out and made me think, oh, that's not good, is that his jacket was actually hung up on the door, but it wasn't originally there. It was somewhere on the floor, and that rhymes, so you know it's true. And the police reported that it was originally on the floor, and that one of the cops actually hung it up, which I think is really weird. I think that's really weird to do when you're taking a picture. Usually, when you're taking pictures at a crime scene, you would leave the things in the original places they were. You wouldn't move them around. So, it looks like either the police did an absolutely crap job of investigating this case, or they did a great job of covering it up. I personally think that somebody killed him. I think that there's no justice for this boy, and we need to fight for that justice. We need to sign the petition, at least for child neglect, which, by the way, will be in the description below, and fight for this case to be reopened, because something's going on. Something's up, and we at least need to know the truth, whether it was his parents who did it, or whether somebody else did it and nobody knows, or whether this was just a basic case of child neglect. There are so many holes in this story, we need to find out the truth. You can check me out on my platforms and Patreon and all that crap, but more importantly, I want to hear you guys comment. If you liked this video, tell me. Whatever. Anyways, tell me what you guys think. That's the most important part about this, because tell me if I'm wrong. I know I'm missing quite a lot of information, and there are other individuals who did a way better job of explaining this than me, because I'm a nervous wreck. Oh, and my researching skills are suboptimal as well. Also, I'm linking a couple of other channels that did a great job of explaining some of this stuff in the description below. One was Truth for Reality, and the other was that chick with her son. I don't remember their names. Thank you so much for watching, my friends. It has been lovely.